Hey, it's Ringer, and I figured it would be fun to make a little commentary track for the Boys video that I just released because it's a project that I really enjoyed working on and I'm really proud of, and I figured that if you liked it, you might be interested to hear a little bit more about what went into it. So here we go. You'll notice that I'm using Final Cut to play this back. That's the program that I actually used to edit everything, and I know that it's maybe a little atypical. A lot of people are using Premiere now. I don't know. I got into editing with iMovie and then Final Cut was a natural progression. I don't mind Premiere. I'm just not very efficient in it. And I keep telling myself I'm going to try to get to learn it better, but hasn't happened yet. So I'm okay at it, but I'm faster with Final Cut for right now. And they both have their share of things that they do really well and their share of things that annoy me a lot. So that's maybe something I'll get into some other time, but anyway, that's why we're watching it in Final Cut. Also, this intro part was one that went through a few different iterations. I had a vision of maybe me being just sort of looking distracted or zoned out on a bed, and you can hear conversation in the background, but it's clear that I'm not paying attention to it. And I kept that in. I don't know if it's super clear that that's what's happening at this point, but the way I originally envisioned it didn't work out quite as I was hoping, and so instead I just sort of segmented it off and used it as an intro piece, and if it doesn't make sense, it's not a huge deal. If it does make sense, then great. But the point is I'm distracted because I'm too busy thinking about boys. So also, thank you to the people who helped me, especially at the beginning of this, because it needed a few different voices just to simulate this conversation. And I ended up taking those and layering them over each other and taking out a lot of the high and just leaving the mids and lows, and that's why it sounds so muffled. But those people are good friends and also very generous in that they were able to take an hour out of their time on Thursday evening and come in and stand around in the hotel room for an hour and just be patient with me giving poor directions and getting this done. So thank you guys so much. And then thank you also to Norm for filming this and actually came back and knocked a little bit more out on Friday morning, but really do appreciate it as always. And so shout out to them. So you can hear them talking in the background. We've got the title, not title, but the intro here, so you know it's Furfest, which I thought was really important because this is really about the convention. And then the video starts, and one of the first things I thought was I think I want to do this in letterbox, and so I did, and that meant I had to do a lot of adjusted cropping to some of these segments, but it's, I mean, I like the overall end result. These first clips with Raul, they really did set the tone for like the rest of the video because I was going through a lot of footage and feeling a little directionless, and after the intro and outro, which were very predefined things, I wasn't quite sure where to start, and honestly this is maybe the first or second set of clips that I put in, but it was a proof of concept at the intro to see if I could get it working the way I wanted to. And when I put this in, and then this next suit, whose name I can never remember, but it's one of the most beautiful suits I've really seen ever. When I put those two sets of clips in, it was just like transformative, and it made me suddenly realize that I had a viable project. And when you get that feeling after uncertainty like this, because I was so nervous leading up to MFF about being able to capture the footage that I wanted to that would do this justice, it motivated me, and it was a great feeling. So there's a lot of cutting in this, and you can see that by the number of clips that are in the timeline. And I had I had the rough idea that I wanted to do sort of pairs or triplets of clips, so it was, you know, jumping but between the same subject a couple times before moving on to something else, at least initially, just so it gave you time to sort of establish and see the person. But the timing itself was a separate process, and what I ended up doing was taking one of the clips that I had that was longer, just dropping it in the timeline and then slicing it up I mean, there's a slice tool, I think, both in Final Cut and Premiere that just lets you slice a clip in place. But the nice thing about Final Cut is you slice that clip and you can drag it around and you can snap clips to each other. But in doing that, like, I sliced it up and it looked basically like this when I was done. And that allowed me to then start to fill in those blank spaces with all the actual clips that I wanted to use, and they would stay kind of snapped to that timing. So I did the timing and the content sort of separately, and that was really, I think that ended up being a really great workflow, because I don't think I would have had the patience to both time it and choose content at the same time. That's just pretty overwhelming. The other thing was I just had so many clips to choose from when I was done. I was really worried when I was filming that I would end up with a shortage, and I mean, speaking from experience, when you get home and you realize you didn't film enough to like adequately fill out the thing that you wanted to make, it's a really tough experience, especially something like this where there are no second chances. I mean, I'm not going to get back to a con in the near future, and I'm not going to get to MFF obviously until the next one, and it doesn't make sense to cross this video over 2 MFFs. And so I ended up with a lot of footage, which is great, but presents the other problem of how do you sift through all of it and figure out what to use. And what I ended up doing was just assigning ratings to each clip. So on a 1 to 5 scale, with 5 being clips that were either people that I really wanted to make sure I got in the video, or that were filmed so well that I wanted to make sure they were part of it, and then going down from there. And so 5s were all must-haves, and when I was all done with this, I think I ended up using all of the 5s and maybe about half the 4s, and there was just, by that point, no real room for anything below that. And I'm grateful to have had enough to choose from, but I also feel bad for the people who I wasn't able to use. And I hope that you can understand that there's nothing personal there. It's just that I wanted to make the best video I could, and I wanted to make sure that it was a video about especially my friends. So there are a lot of people in here who I included specifically because we are friends, and because that's what cons mean to me, is just being able to spend time with your friends and celebrate with them. And if I made a video like this but didn't include those personal connections, or didn't give priority to those personal connections, it would feel sort of disingenuous. So that's how we ended up where we did. So we haven't even talked about the music yet, so I'm going to pause it because A, this is my favorite part of the song, and I adore everything that Jeremy did on the song, period. But this is my absolute favorite part, and I think the imagery that goes along with it just made me so excited. Both for those intro segments and these bridge segments, I just wanted to make sure to get a couple really good suits that you could I don't know, like sink your teeth into a little more, and I feel really good about the ones that ended up there. Like I said, I think Ralph's new suit is great, and I love that dinosaur whose name I can't remember, and I think Schecter's suit is awesome, and I'm so happy that I could include Mizuno here as well. They're all just great and fun, and just made me really happy to have them in the video. And then we start to speed up at the final chorus, and you know, go through a few more boys more quickly, which was always the plan. I mean, it was gonna be, the idea was that A, there were so many wonderful people at this convention, and at the end it's almost an overwhelming amount. Like, you'll never be able to see and process everything that you're seeing, because it's just so much of the sensory overload. And then we end with Coyote Boy. So the music on this was really different, because I really don't collaborate a lot with anybody on anything. And Jeremy and I have been talking for quite a while, but this came about after I made the Saturday night video. and he mentioned that if I ever wanted somebody to do like mixing or anything, because we had talked about beforehand, I was telling him how nervous I was mixing because it's so hard to mix objectively, and so he'd offered that, and then we talked a little more about maybe. I think I did approach him with the idea of mixing it, but I also said that if there was stuff he wanted to add to it, that he should, and we talked about it for a little while as I was starting to put it together, and then what I ended up doing was kind of a skeleton of a track that had all of the vocal parts in it laid out sort of the way I envisioned, and some real basic instrumentation because I wasn't expecting those instruments to really make it long term, but they had like bits and pieces of melody that I wanted to include. And so I did that, and then I handed it over to them, or over to him, and just let it evolve. And it sort of I think it was the end of October when I handed him all the files, and he started getting me stuff pretty early on, and then we kind of had a pretty finalized arrangement, I want to say a week to not even 2 weeks later, and then got the final mix toward the end of November. So by the time that the filming happened, the music was already done. And so then it was just a challenge to try to like do all this and not share it with everybody, because I wanted it to be a big, cool reveal and sort of all come out at once. But suffice it to say, I'm really excited with how the music turned out, and I'm so thankful that he was interested in working on this. And I don't want to say that it'll happen again, because that's not up to me. But it would be cool if it did at some point, if the opportunity presented itself. But regardless, I'm really happy with this. I'm really happy for his help on it. And let's, I guess, finish out the credits. Raxky is the name I've been using for music stuff, so if that was confusing, that's just me. These are the people who spoke in the intro. Norm is the person who filmed in the intro. Here's a nice little message, not just for next MFF, but 2019, since it's the end of 2018 now. And this is kind of the last big project I put out. So it's a really, yeah, I don't know how many times I can say that I'm really pleased with how it came out, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I mentioned it in the description of the video, but one of the things I was struggling with beforehand was how I was going to film this, and I decided pretty early on that I was going to try to shoot it all on my iPhone with a gimbal, because my iPhone is the most competent in terms of shooting slow motion footage, and in that it can do it and my DSLR can't, so that's how we ended up there. So yeah, shot on an iPhone in 1080p at 120 frames per second, and then slowed down to 30 frames per second for this, so it's all at quarter speed. But for the most part, turned out really well. If you don't look at it too closely, it looks really nice. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your interest, and have a good rest of your day.